Next product up on our list is going to be the Wyze Switch. Now, a couple caveats about the Wyze Switch. The Wyze Switch is a good alternative for the socket. So these are the Wyze sockets that I just showed you. If you don't want to worry about having your lights on all the time to have the socket running, if you don't think you're going to put an outdoor V3 camera out there, the Wyze Switch is another great alternative. Now, this is going to be just a flat Decora switch. It's not going to have an up and down like a lot of people are traditionally expecting. It requires a single pole outlet with a neutral. And I'm going to show you exactly what that means and why that's so important, but definitely follow the installation and safety instructions on this. I can't repeat that enough. Get yourself one of those Klein tool non-contact voltage detectors, because this is going to save your life if you're working in an electrical box that somebody accidentally makes hot again by turning something. And there's a couple cool interesting things about this that make it very unique, and even more unique than my Casa dimmers as well. So on this one, it has multi-touch capability, and I can't stress how important that is. Literally, you can touch it one time to turn the light switch on and off. You can tap it twice to do any other event or rule or automation from your home that you want to, which is a really, really slick little system there. So that's another interesting idea. The app from Wyze is really good about walking you through all the things. So let's talk about US electrical systems. This is my little demonstration unit of what a house might be like. Assume this is your circuit panel way back in your garage or wherever it is. I actually do have a little meter running. So it's 118 volts is what it's saying. It's got 11 watts of power being used, 0.2 amps of current, and it's got a total energy consumption in there as well of 10 watt hours. So that's how long it's been running. And the only thing that's running on it right now, as you see, was this outlet adapter. Now, if I undo the Novastella outlet, that goes back to almost zero. So basically zero. So that's a really cool little deal that I have. I don't have that linked, but this would be telling me that I have an electrical current applied. So I have voltage potential in my circuit. This is a regular wall outlet that you might have. This has a standard Decora plug. I'm going to use this later when I show you some smart plugs and some smart switches, things like that. And that goes up to a traditional Decora light switch. And that Decora light switch is wired to turn on and off a regular light. Now, this is a traditional American US lighting circuit. Now, sometimes they don't go through an outlet box. Many cases, your outlets are going to be one circuit, your lights are on a different circuit with different amperage requirements. But the one thing that if your house was built after about 1980 that it's going to have is a neutral wire. So why is this so important? The American US electrical system is a 240 volt electrical system. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It is a 240 volt, and the reason I know that is if I go to your house and I go look at your dryer, it's most likely 240 volt if it's not running on gas or some other technology. But what they do is you have two different legs. You have one side of the 240, you have the other side of the 240, and that alternating current goes between them and makes the full potential. Now, your neutral is the middle. So if you took 240 and divided it in half, and this is a very simplistic explanation, you guys can blast me in the comments about everything that I'm wrong, so read the comments if you want to get some humor out of this. But essentially, you have two different sides of that same 240 volt potential that are 120 volt, and that's what we use in the US. In Europe, a lot of times they use the 220 system entirely, and so all of your devices are on the same, not circuit, but a same essentially incoming feed. So to do that in your house, when they get wires that come in from the street, you're going to have both legs of that, and the neutral runs through the ground around you. So there's one place that in the US electrical system that you're able to bond your neutral to your ground, and that's in your power box, in your circuit breaker. In most cases, again, I'm not giving you a lesson on electronics here. So long story short, and the reason I brought all that up is because for safety, you have both a ground and a neutral wire. So we have a 3-wire electrical system. You're going to have a black, a white, and usually a green or a copper, bare copper wire that's within these systems. And that's super important because this requires a neutral electrical system and a neutral wire. And the reason for that is that the Wyze is using that power to power itself, do all of its Wi-Fi communication, and then it's switching the switch above. If you don't have that neutral wire and you try to wire it in a different way, the current is going through whatever device you have and coming back. And this is something I saw in the Facebook group, and it really bothered me. I said, I got to do a show on this, because he was able to get it to start up, but it wouldn't control the lights and it was making a buzzing noise. It wasn't working right. And that's because it was running off of the current through his device. So in some places in the US and some builds, especially older ones, they didn't have that neutral wire. And so you'd have an electrical system that would go to the light. There would be one wire from the light to the switch that would just be a contact switch. It would have two legs of the same hot circuit, and it would be marked. You'll see that white wire is marked with like usually black tape or something like that to show, or red tape, to show that that was a hot line in that box. It wasn't neutral anymore. Now, I'm going to show you that when we go into the app to install this switch. But again, safety first. Make sure you have the right tools here. Make sure you have safety glasses. And also make sure that you disconnect the electrical system every single time it tells you. Now, I have two ways to check this. I have a light switch here and a light. And I also have the little display down here. Now, don't fall for what my dad fell for a long time ago. He was replacing a ceiling fan, and he turned the switch off here thinking that that was enough. He went up on the ladder, started to do the ceiling fan, and got zapped and couldn't figure out why. He's like, I turned the switch off. Well, sure, he had turned the switch off, but that only cuts off one part of the potential of the circuit. So there was actually, in that case, there was voltage or power at the box up there. So always make sure you turn the entire circuit off at the breaker, back in your electrical system, and then use something like this. Remember, we got this here to double check that your circuit is off. So I can go ahead here. This will even detect usually stray current anywhere. So double check, make sure that circuit's off, just for safety. Correction here, it 240 nominal usually reads about 220. Don't forget the hertz and phase. That was from Dave. No, thank you. No, he's absolutely right. There's a bunch more about the US electrical system. This is why we pay electricians. I'm simplifying this down for you guys so that we can talk about it when we get inside that switch. For tools today, I'm just going to use a very simple slotted screwdriver. And the reason I would recommend not using power tools on these, a lot of people screw up and they use power tools. These are all really easy to strip out. All of these little tiny screws could very easily get stripped. And I don't want you guys to have to deal with that if this is your first time doing the work. So, light switch is off. I have this little meter that I installed is off. I can pull the end of the connector and I know that the end of my wire connector that I've used for this demonstration unit is right in my hand, and so that's not plugged into anything. And again, I can use this. This will even work around the outside of outlets. Again, no metal pieces on the end of this, which is really cool, why I showed you this tool very first in the show. And you can go around all of your outlets. If you don't have one of these, you got to get it. One of my favorite tools. Okay, I'm going to take us over. Believe it or not, I'm going to go into the app because I want you guys to see that. So there's the app. I'm going to go to the plus sign up here. You see the plus in the upper left corner. We're going to add a device. This is a power and lighting device now, and it is the Wyze Switch. Now, again, all the caveats I just told you about and warnings. In some jurisdictions, a licensed electrician is required to install this. If you're uncomfortable with doing any sort of house wiring yourself, or you don't have the knowledge, don't proceed. Just stop. It's not worth it. It's not worth your safety. It's not worth your house's safety. It's not worth your family's safety. So just quick warning here. Those two things that I talked to you about, the single pole and neutral. So neutral we talked about already. One of that is that inside of the switch, there's going to be a white wire, or actually a cluster of white wires. And that's really, really important because the neutral is required for this switch to operate and to operate safely. You can't plug it into the ground. You can't just find another wire in there to use. And if you even get it to turn on, it won't work as it's intended. It won't turn the light on and off. You're just going to waste a lot of time and potentially danger yourself. Single pole is another one that sometimes is hard for people to understand. You want to see an electrical system in there that has 3 wires. It's going to have white, black, and either green or bare copper. and it doesn't have a light switch in another location. So this is real common in kitchens and stairs, is you're going to see an electrical system that has 2 switches, and that's called a 3-way. So single pole is 1 switch on and off. A 3-way light switch is one that has 2, and there's even a 4-way that has 3 light switches at different areas. So I'm not going to get into the other ones. If you see red in the box, oftentimes that can be for a 3-way system. So just another kind of trick of the trade there. Not guaranteed again on all these. You should know your electrical system. If you're not comfortable with these terms, might be an idea or time to take a look. So if I hit help me check, this is really cool. They've done an incredible job with their help information here. So there's the mid 1980s thing, and here's where it's going to talk about the different wiring. But I'm going to point to the ones that we have here. So in the top one, they have a single switch with neutral, and this is what you're going to see in my situation here. This is exactly how I've wired my example to match theirs perfectly. And then if you look down below, this is the one you don't want. Now you're going to open the box and you're going to say, well, how do I know which one I have? I can't tear my drywall down, right? No, you can actually look just inside the box. If you only have one set of wires coming in, you're not most likely not neutral. If you have a white wire in there, but it has something wrapped around it, or tape like that, you don't have a neutral. If you have a white wire that goes into the same switch like this as your black wire, you don't have a neutral. So all of those things are telling us that that could be it. Now, I don't think they're going to show a 3-pole or 3-way switch here, which they don't. But that's, again, if you had a 3-way, you're going to have an extra wire coming out of your switch, and you're going to have another switch nearby that can control it as well. And those are really advanced electrical projects. There are some switches that you can get that will actually do smart switches that will do 3-way. I don't have them here on the stream today, but if you're interested, let me know. I'd be happy to take a look at that. And I'm going to go back out. So again, Wyze app is incredibly good at this. The person that was in the forum that had it all wired wrong, they completely skipped by all of these warnings. So don't be that person. It's telling us a few things that we're going to need and the few things that it comes with. So it comes with mounting screws, wall plates. They even give you a small piece accessory wire in the box, which I think is really cool. Some things that you might need, it's telling you that voltage tester, wire strippers, or in many cases, needle nose pliers can be really valuable. That's another thing. And then just regular pliers, if you're having to twist or cut things, those can be really, really helpful. So we're going to say begin, and I'm going to confirm. This is kind of cool. It won't let me hit the next until I've confirmed that the power is turned off. This is probably one of the best installation how-to guides. I have to commend the guys over at Wyze. They've done a great job of making this work. So it's saying remove the existing switch. So we've exposed the switch here. Now it's just not worth it. Again, all these little boxes here, they're behind your drywall. If you were to strip this out, you could have all sorts of issues. So it's going to take me a little bit longer. And you may see electricians use power equipment when they're doing this, but in the end, a good screwdriver is going to work really, really well. Don't tell my dad. I think I stole this one from him. I think this is one of his Craftsman or Husky or whatever color they are. And I'm wearing safety glasses. I am doing everything as safe as I can. We've checked it about 6 ways from Sunday to make sure that this is a safe circuit that is completely off. Now, let me show you here just how the switch looks. I'm pulling it out just gingerly. Now you can see on the side of my switch, I got 2 black wires, and then I have a ground that's on this side of the. So on this other side of the switch, I have a ground wire that's copper. I have in my sample here this copper that's all loomed together, but you notice my neutral wire isn't used, and it's going to be in the back. I'm going to pull that out here. My neutral wires are just tied together. There's only 2 of them. So my neutral wires are right there. Now there's a couple things you can do. We can go through the different various installation techniques here. So this is the switch. We're going to do the quick unboxing here. So inside the switch, like I mentioned, I'm going to have a spare wire here, and I'm going to have wire caps, have additional screws as well. They're also going to have a couple other things in here that you're going to need. They're going to have the switch itself, which is inside the bag here. They're going to have wire labels, and this can be really, really valuable, these wire labels, especially if this is your first time working on this or you plan to change it again later, which can be really cool. So this is the Wyze switch, and it's got the cover that goes on the outside. Now you can just pull the switch apart from the cover. So you see how I did that? And that's going to happen when you get it installed. If you need to take this off for maintenance, you can put a screwdriver under the bottom and just pry, and it's going to come out like that. The rest of it, I'm pretty impressed. This is the first time opening this unit. It's pretty compact, and it has the different connectors there. There's one line connector. That line means you're hot, where it's coming in. Load means you're light. That's where it's going out. And then what's interesting too, you notice how they're kind of color coded as well. You have a black one and you have a silver one. That's your neutral and your load. Now the advantage of that is all of those are clearly marked so that when I start to change things within this circuit, I can actually follow those. Now I'm going to use the app to get me to the next step here. Just want to make sure I'm doing everything and following the rules. So let's pull the app up, expose the existing wiring. So remove those, and you can tell me, show me here. And they've got some videos. Their videos are pretty good, but they compete with me. I'm kidding. So I'm going to show you that as well. This is another cool thing about the app. Take a picture of your existing wiring. So I can say open camera. I'm not going to give it access to my photo album just yet, but I could say open camera and take a picture of how it was wired just for safety. If there's ever an issue later, you can do that, and you can even share it with Wyze. I'm going to skip that because I don't need to. How many neutral wires do you see? Now, if I say 1 or 2 for safety, and what they're recommending and what I'm going to follow is to do the pigtail anyway. So it's saying to label your neutral wire. Now, again, everything is off, so I'm comfortable doing this. And, you know, a lot of people go, oh, well, you can't get electrocuted off of the neutral. You can get bit by just about anything depending on the circuit. If this was, again, wired the other way that we talked about. So you can put this little pigtail in here. Now I'm going to remove this one. A lot of times you may not have this much. I kind of on purpose built this switch that has a lot of extra lead. And personally, I don't like having that much excess out here. You know, in many cases I might snip that down because I'm twisting this around. So you can see there, I'm twisting that around. And I can put this back on. As long as all of the wire is covered by the cap, I'm not going to worry. But if there was any bit of wire exposed, even if it was the neutral, I will come back here and clip that and just make it. So now that is my neutral wire. So that's on and installed properly. So we've done that. And I'm going to go ahead and label the neutral wire that they gave me with their attached clip here, their little tag. Next item here, do you see a ground wire? That's a really good question. Sometimes your ground will be in the box. I do actually see this, and they're saying that the ground wire is generally bare or copper or green in color. In my case, it is bare copper, and so I do see a ground wire, yes. Now, if everything's been done properly, your ground wire will already be pigtailed. That's real common in electrical systems, and so I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to label my ground because it's already pigtailed. And I'm just going to grab the piece of that pigtail and do that. So I've got my little green tag that you can see there. And then we're going to hit next. Now, this is where things can get a little interesting. I watched just, again, their video this morning to be double safe here. There is the line and the load. In their situation, they said if it doesn't work, you can swap those and check if you got them wrong. But I'll just show you a quick way to understand the difference. This depends completely on your electrical system. In my case, my feed is from below, like from a basement, and my output is from the top. If you had two coming in from the top, you'd have maybe a feed and one. You may not know which is which. A couple different ways that you can find out which is which. If you had all of the wires not touching and not connected, you can use our handy dandy electrical meter. You can go over here and touch them, and it's going to freak out when it's got the one that has power when the switch is off. When you switch the switch on, it'll freak out when you have the one that's on. The reason it's not freaking out right now is because I don't have power to either of them. So there's no power coming out of this or into this. And the next step that it's telling us is it wants us to label the line and the load. Line is where the power is coming from. Load is where the power is going to. So I'm going to take the load sticker here, and I'm looking in my thing, and I know that this comes in from the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put load. Now you don't have to put the stickers on. I'm following the directions because I want to show you can do this yourself with the proper directions. And again, no liability here. I have to say this over and over. This is me showing you how to do this on my electrical test station. This is not in service. This is not going to be used for anything but demonstration purposes. And if in doubt, hire yourself a licensed electrician to do this work. Can't say that enough. We're going to go ahead and hit next. Now we should have all of these lines. Now I just happened to label them while they were connected, which can be helpful. So if you're in doubt at all, and I'm going to go through here and just loosen these side lugs. Once I take these off, I'm going to be able to see real quickly what goes to what. This is where a good set of needle nose can be helpful. So on this one, especially on the grounds, it's real common. So this piece wraps around the screw, and I want to just open it up a little bit and use my needle nose to slide it out and around the screw. Now, if you want to, you can wear gloves to do this kind of work too, because these ends can be really sharp and can poke you. Just depends how accident prone you are. In this case, mine do not go, they're not push-ins on the back of the outlet. They're actually wrapped around the poles. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. So I got two of them free, right? And if you're using connectors like this, be real careful on the shielding on here, because it can actually damage the insulation if you're grabbing with needle nose the insulation. Okay, just giving myself enough room to get that out, which I have. Now you got some choices here. In this case, where the wires have been bent over, you've got a gauge that's a lot longer. Do you see this? And the place where the wire and the copper has bent, especially on newer, cheaper copper, is often weaker. So the more you bend this, the more you move it, the weaker it gets. You want to strip off, they call it a strip gauge. You want to strip off enough of the wire to make a connection, but not too much that it's going to be brittle or exposed. So, you know, most of your devices, and I'm just looking to see if the Wyze one has a strip gauge on it, which I don't see on here. That'll be interesting. Let's see what the app tells us to do next. So I've got my wiring here. I did not fold over. You'll notice I didn't flatten the ground. The other ones I flattened and made straight, and I didn't do that because the ground is one of the only ones that's going to go over a screw. So I'm going to hit next on here. Connect the wires to your Wyze switch is the next stage that it's telling me to do. So again, all of these are off. I can touch them and not feel bad. This is the back of my Wyze switch. It's got line, neutral, and load. And you can put them in really in any order, but I would do it in a way that makes it easier for you. So as I'm unscrewing this, and I want to show you guys this carefully, as I'm unscrewing this, I'm not taking it all the way out. There's going to be some resistance when you get to the end. Don't go past that, because what it is, there's a captivated nut in there, they call it, and that's going to be clamping down. If you take it and you're able to get it all the way out, that's usually a bad thing. So let's not do that. So this one goes into the line. So you see here, I'm pushing it into the line portion of the outlet. And now I'm able to get all the insulation to be covered up in this case. So I'm not worried about this one. But if for some reason you saw any copper on there, stop right away and you know, go ahead and we're going to resolve that. If you saw any copper, either push it in further, or you may need to cut it shorter. And that's if you had a really long end. So again, this is just properly installing these. I'm loosening these up. Now sometimes it can help if you're having a lot of trouble in your system getting wires. Like this one's looped over here, so I know if I put this all together and I'm trying to carry this up, it's not going to work. You can rearrange your wires in the beginning here. I can put the neutral down towards the bottom because I know that's where it connects. And you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a help before you do the rest of this. So now I'm tightening this one in. This is John the Net Guy. I do PC build, tech tips, gear review, and apparently amateur electrical. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. There is a Tech on Tuesday show I do every Tuesday, and this week's just happens to be a little bit special. I am out of town on business, so there's my neutral, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. Now this is stranded wire, and it acts a little bit differently, so you saw me twist the end of it. And that's important because stranded and solid behave a little bit differently. They both carry current, but when you're trying to splice and do things, stranded can be a little bit more difficult, I think, to work with sometimes. So now this is going to be a tough one, but I can get it in there. There we go. So that ground one is looped, and you can if you want, and this can make it a little bit harder to undo later, you can tighten that down just a little bit. And then the thing that the Wyze company recommends, now that you have all your wiring done, they don't recommend you shove it all back in the box. They want you to stop at this point and kind of verify things. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I check my terminal connection. It says gently pull on the wires, which I'm going to do. Which I've done on every single wire. That neutral is a little bit loose only because that screw turns easier. There we go. Then we'll hit next. Turn your circuit back on. Now, let's back this thing up and see how she does. I'm going to go ahead and turn the circuit back on. And the way I do that in my fake electrical system here, and I'm just looking to make sure everything's clean, is I plug it into my outlet, but you don't get to do that, which I've done. Okay, now I've got power and my light came on, and the thing that I'm looking for specifically is my new Wyze switch is blinking. So that's great. So it's asking me, is it blinking? Yes. Turn the circuit breaker back off, which is kind of interesting. Now it wants me to turn it right back off right when I did that. So let's do what it says. Turn it back off. Power has been turned off. Now it's going to want us to put this inside the wall outlet box. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is one of the harder parts in all electrical, especially depending on how much room they've left you on these wires. A couple things that can help. If you can get wires started, I like to work with the ground and the neutral because those usually have the most wires, and I can push those towards the back to begin with. And if you have a deeper outlet box, that helps a whole lot. These ones here are just the standard size, but some of them will have even a deeper one, especially, you know, when we've got these newer ones that have such a large amount to put in the box. So you can see I've got that all the way pushed back, and this is where having some of those screws is going to help. Give me 1 second. So this one here has these screws. Sometimes, depending on your box, you may or may not want to transfer those screws to the new one. Wyze has given you 2 brand new ones, which should thread properly into your outlet. But assuming they did or didn't, you can go ahead and do this. Whatever you do, don't force it. Don't use, again, power tools. If you are going to push on anything into an outlet box, use something non-marring, something insulated. Now, I'm going to take this back off here in a little bit, so I'm not going to put it all super duper tight, but you would tighten those down till they're snug. On the Decora outlets, it does not use, like in my other Decora outlet, it used those holes to drill in. In the Wyze one, just make sure you're indexing the bottom of the thing is that little tiny hole. You put it on the top, and you put it on the bottom, and you just push. So that will go right up against your drywall, and it's going to look awesome. So this has been John the Net Guy. I am following the instructions here on how to install the Wyze switch. We're almost to the moment of truth here. I've got it all installed, and we're going to go hit the next button, and it shows you how to mount the wall plate back on it, which we just did. And then it's asking us to turn the power back on. Again, in my situation, I've got a couple indicators. I know when I have power. I have this indicator down here will light up because that's my little power meter. And then I can plug it in. So I've plugged it in, and the light is on, obviously, and the little light here is blinking. I wanted to show you that because that's important as part of your installation steps. That little light is blinking there. So that's great. So we're going to go ahead and say Start Setup. Searching for your switch. Select my network, which I will. Uh-oh. Password time. Let's see if it'll do it. So you guys can see that. I'm going to hit connect. It's connecting. It's adding the device. And it's finishing setup. Now, what I love about this switch is I'm going to call this, what do we want to call it? First switch. So you can control it with those smart devices, which we'll use later, and then we have just basic on-off control. So I'm hitting it on the app, on and off, and then I can pull the controls up, vacation mode, I can create timers, I can do all that stuff. What's cool about it is if you go into the settings, which I just did, so it's called first switch. When I do a single press, what do I want it to do? Classic control. Or just turn on my Wyze smart bulbs and then add in my connected devices. So even though this switch is on the wall and I touch it one time, and I can show you that here too, Just a real simple press, right? Turns the light on and off. What I can do now is I can add additional controls to run my vacuum cleaner, to turn on and off my studio lights, to do all these other cool things. And this is one of the most unique things I would say about this. So when I double press, and so when first switch, double press, do an action. So what do I want it to do? Now I've set up some rules on this, but I want my studio right. Oh, internal service error. Wyze, what are you doing to me? Internal service error. So I'm going to have to follow up with my folks over at Wyze and see what's going on here. But the installation steps that we did are exactly the same. The fact that we can smart control this switch is really cool. That's awesome. It usually does find devices pretty quick. And it did find my first switch. So I'm on a different one. Now this is my Amazon app and I'm able to turn it on. So that's just showing you that. I can also use voice controls and say, Alexa, turn off the first switch. There you go. So she is Alexa integrated today already. So that's pretty cool. So that's the Wyze switch and everything on how to install it safely. At this point, you wouldn't have to do anything else. It's ready to go. And that leads us to our next product.